Thank you very much, Rose. That was very touching, very compelling. Know yourself. Please welcome now Alphonse Dem Ahola. You met him yesterday. He's going to speak with us this morning about learning and the challenges within the Francophone community.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm back again. And this time I hope nobody will stop me. But I'm going to stick into my 10 minutes. I will skip very quickly a lot of things because we have challenges and learning to respect diversity within the Francophone Canadian community. First of all, this title is a little bit misleading because there is nothing like as a Francophone community. There is a lot of Francophone communities, just like there is not an African community in a proper sense. So I have some statistics here I will skip very quickly on that. And if you want, I can send you the presentation. But this is where I want to stop just for a minute. First of all, to say that the ACFA, the French Canadian Association in Alberta, there is one important thing that we need to know with the Francophone community, is that there is demographic changes, and this comes with a lot of challenges. What is important to know is that French-speaking people were the first in Alberta. I'm talking about Alberta, even though I'm supposed to talk about the whole Canada, but we don't have time. So I want to focus more on Alberta. In Alberta, Francophones were the first community. French is the first language spoken in Alberta before the 19th century. Do you know that? Nobody knows that, but it's true. And it's only with the migration and after the England Empire took over that English people will start settling in Alberta, and finally, English will be the majority in Alberta. But that wasn't the case before. And it's interesting, but it's true. And you can check that. And so, ACFA, as you see the name, the French Canadian Association of Alberta, they are struggling between keeping their heritage and including the new Francophones that are coming. See the name, French Canadian Association of Alberta. And this French Canadian Association of Alberta is supposed to represent all the Francophones, even me. So, in case you don't know, I'm a French Canadian Francophone, which doesn't make any sense. Because honestly, I prefer to read everything but French. No. Everything but French. I'm Francophone, but I'm not French. I'm not Français. I'm a Francophone. I speak French because what you know. But it doesn't mean that I'm Français. Tout de même. So we have that. And also we have the Rifa. Rifa is the Francophone Immigrant Network of Alberta. Rifa is fighting for autonomy. Why? When I came in Canada a few years ago, I found that there is a Francophone network. But this Francophone immigration network is being run by the ACFA. It was run by ACFA. So ACFA represents all the immigrants. But there is not even one immigrant sitting in the board of that Rifa. So I asked them, why is that you're speaking on behalf of immigrants and you're doing things for immigrants? But there is no immigrant really taking decision in all what you're doing. So we went into a huge fight. And I had a lot of difficulties with some of these ACFA's people. And finally, I traveled. The community came together and paid my a flight to go to Moncton, where Francophones of all Canada had a meeting. So I went there in Moncton, and I tried to push this issue, saying that, please, we are immigrants, and we know our own issue. But how come that somebody else is running the immigration, the network, the immigration, Francophone immigration network? So, and finally, I managed to convince the federal government. So the federal government said, because the Rifa, it was put in place by the immigration ministry. So the immigration ministry said, okay, if you want it to be if you want the immigrant to run that organization, you need to gather all the Africans community, and if they agree with you, we'll give you money to set up a new network that will be run by only by immigrants. So I managed to gather everybody, and we applied to the federal government, and we were given up to $500,000 to put in place a new organization that is run now by immigrants themselves. So, and that was the first thing. The other thing was the Frapp. Frapp is Francophonie Albertaine Plurielle. It's a new organization that was put in place in 2014. I'm going quite fast because we don't have time. But we had one thing that happened last year in Alberta. I'm sure some of you are aware of that. The federal government withdrew the funding for the settlement organization, Francophone settlement organization in Alberta, because of sexual misconduct allegation. So that money, that organization lost the whole money, up to maybe almost $2 million of funding because of sexual misconduct. So when I heard that, I gathered again the community and told them that, you know what, these $2 million are going now elsewhere. We will lose that money. And we are African community. In that agency was mostly serving African immigrants. So I said what we need to do is to come together and to advocate with the federal government and ask them not to give that money to another organization, but to find within the African Francophone community one organization that can have that money and give and render the settlement services. And again, we went into battles. It's on TV, in newspaper, everywhere in Canada. A lot of people know about it. So I was on TV, on radio, everywhere, advocating for the African community so that we will not lose that money. But fortunately, the federal government listened to me again, and we were given $2 million to welcome African immigrants in Edmonton and Fort McMurray. And so it's just to tell you how difficult it can be for African Francophone community. We are the minority of the minority. And in this, we are in a situation where, you know, Francophones Albertan that are mostly from French descent. They are a little bit, they are nervous about African immigrant, Francophone African immigrant. I'm not sure about why, but obviously this is a problem for them. So they are being challenged, and they are learning how to include the new African that are coming, but it's not easy. And one other thing that I wanted to point out is the challenge about education. you know, the Francophone education, it's supposed, there is some objectives that the Francophone education has, is to provide a learning experience in the context of the French language, the French culture, the French identity, and the French community. And it helps address the linguistic and cultural erosion experienced by students and by the community. But here, we're talking about the French Albertan community. We don't talk about the African community. So what about the African heritage? So, and this is quite sad because, you know, my heritage was challenged even in Africa. Even my language. And I know that is the case for most of you. But how come that when I'm here in Canada again, this will just keep going on? Because in our schools, they don't talk about Francophone, about African heritage. So this is the dilemma that Francophones are facing. They want to preserve their culture and to sustain their culture. But how will you do that with a lot of Africans coming in? What culture are we going to sustain? Is it the French culture? Is it the African culture? We're still struggling with that. And it's a serious issue right now. So, Francophone African immigrants are not right holders. They are tolerated by the school authorities. I need some explanation here. I need to explain certain things. In order to enroll your child in a Francophone school, you need to be a right holder. So a right holder is why? It means that in Canada, it's here, for Canadian citizens in Alberta, the right of a Francophone education is for those parents whose first language learned and still understood is French, who have received their primary school instruction in Canada in French, or whom any child has received or is receiving primary or secondary school instruction in French in Canada. But none of us has this criteria. So what that means is that we are not right holders. We are just being tolerated by school authorities. And that's another challenge. But we still need to think about all that. So thank you very much.